Hello and welcome to the second lesson of week 1. This is a mini lecture on daytime retouching because I feel like my main lecture was more on nighttime retouching as it was a space edit. Just to freshen your memory, my name is Mentor Val and I am a global retouching mentor for ZEPETOR class. Before we start, I would like to compare the difference between using the camera tool and Photobooth. If possible, I think everyone should just use the camera tool because the lighting in the photo booth may alter the definition of your picture. For example, it's making my avatar's face look like a tomato, and it's brightening up the red spots. You do not want that, because it'll definitely mess up your retouching. And then, you see me use an image from Pinterest for the background, which in my opinion is superior to Google. So I'm using that as my first layer. My second layer is obviously going to be of my avatar, and I'm clipping my third layer to my second one because I would like to use a light overlay. I simply just use the bucket tool on my third layer, then I change it to 100% color strength and I just dump it on a light yellow color, and then I change the opacity. I also switch the blending mode from normal to darken because that way it makes the dark areas stand out while still modifying the skin color accordingly. Then I'm making a fourth layer, and just like the third layer, I'm clipping it onto my ZEPETOR avatar because I'm going to be making highlights. You see I'm not highlighting like crazy. I just highlight the bit on the shoulder, the top of the arm, the front of the legs, and also areas that stick out on the skirt, and the top of the wrinkles on my avatar's shirt. For highlights and shading, you just want to accentuate the light levels that are already there. If something's brighter, then just highlight it. If something's darker, shade it. So, you just see me fixing up her hands, the sides of her bag, her wings, and also the side of her face. One side of her face is going to be brighter than the other side of her face. On the face, my go-to spots to highlight are the nose bridge, the forehead obviously, eyelid area under the brow, the top of the cheek, and the area above and below the mouth. Now I'm making a fifth layer and also clipping it to my ZEPETOR avatar because this will be the shading layer. So I'm using this dark brown with a reddish tone on the side of her neck that's facing away. For smooth shading, I widen my shading brush and I make downward strokes. This is a lot easier because the brush is wider. Then, for definition of the chin, I go in with a slightly darker color and smaller brush setting, and I just make a little triangular shape. For the shading color that goes out of the neck, just erase them. Now I'm color picking on my ZEPETOR avatar layer, and I'm airbrushing using the color of her hair, airbrushing out an unwanted area of her neck. I'm back to my shading, and I'm just shading the other side of her face covered by her hair. So remember, I'm doing this on my shading layer, and the shading layer is above the overlay. Shading her clothes is quite straightforward because you can see the dark colorations on the original avatar, so I'm just following that and making the shading more pronounced. There's also no harm in going in with a finer size of your shading brush, like the strings on the skirt or the slight shadow that her shirt casts. Since there's lighting already on her hand, I shade the parts around, like the edges. Let's move on to hair retouching. I make a sixth layer, change the blending mode from normal to add, and then afterwards I use my hairbrush and draw downward strokes. It's important to leave some gaps to show that there is some shadow and depth to the hair, to make it look less flat. You do not want to clip this layer because you'll also be adding loose hair strands like you see me doing here. Make your brush size very small so the hair seems more realistic. To add even more depth, in the light parts you can also add some shading. I personally didn't really like how this looked, so I just used an eraser tool to lighten the shading parts up a bit. Lastly, I returned to my highlight layer to get some final highlights in. I fix up my shoes and just highlight the edges, and then I use a dark blue color on add mode, which kind of makes it a bright neon blue, to be this accent highlight color, and it adds so much personality and character to this little retouching edit. This marks the end of my week 1 lectures or lessons. I hope everyone learned something, and I hope that these skills that you've learned are transferable into edits you want to make in the future. Thank you!